Beloved Creator, source of all that is, we express gratitude for every day we experience and every breath in it. Many of us know why we are here. Many of us know what compels us to take action. And many more, it seems, are simply here doing what they do and living their life freely given without purpose or intent. Those of us aware, we express great appreciation for our attunement and our willingness to take action. Keep us on track to always do what is right for the greater good and guide us to whatever correction needs to be made. With your grace and the inherent love we all carry, we will proceed. Let it be so, and so it is.
Thank you, Charlie.
My pleasure.
My name's Ron Vroman. I'm the old white man talking head for the Oregon Statewide Jural Assembly. I'm going to be talking on, and I hope some of the people that are listening in chime in with something to say on perception is reality, serendipity, and cognitive dissonance. DISSOAN, pardon me, DISSONANCE. The ability to carry or not carry two conflicting thoughts or more in your mind at the same time. I had that disease until 2014. Uh, on perception is reality. We had an opportunity this week to speak with one of our sheriffs on Oregon. I really respect the guy. Uh, he met with Cynthia and I, and he actually reads the emails I send out to the sheriffs. And he agreed to speak with us in person. We couldn't set that up, so we chose to do it on Zoom. And he came on, and there was 14 of us and him. And it was polite, but it was stressful. And it brings me to perception. And I'm reminded of a photograph. I forget the details of it, but you look at the photograph from this point of view, and the guy in the photograph is doing something despicable. I mean, really? And then you see the same scene from a different photograph and a different angle of the same guy at the same time, and what you thought you saw on the first photograph was not true. The reality was not as it was perceived on the first photograph. But if you never saw the second photograph, you were cooked, you were done. Your perception was complete. You had already made your decision, and it was not true. And basically, that's where we're at. Then serendipity comes to mind, and I love serendipity. And I was going to speak a bit on Samuel Clemens and Mark Twain, same guy, just his nom de plume. And the thought that it's easier to fool a man a second time than to convince him that he was fooled the first time. And that's also where we're at. And that's also part of perception. Then the next thing is cognitive dissonance. And I have all of these thoughts jamming around in my head, and I click on a guy on YouTube and watch him for a little while, and he brings up Samuel Clemens and Mark Twain and something else that he did, and he brings up cognitive dissonance, and I'm going, wow, this is really getting good here. And then he brings up perception is reality. And that's serendipity. So the reality is that every one of our sheriffs has taken an oath to a bogus constitution, and whether they know it or not, or whether they're willing to accept it or not, comes into that Mark Twain thing. The sheriff we talked to had been a sheriff for 25 years. I don't think he wants to hear what we have to say. He hears it, but he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to believe that the system that he has been upholding and working in and sheriffing in for 25 years is a bogus piece of shit. He really doesn't want to hear that. And it's true. They flipped the Oregon Constitution in 1910, and everybody in the Oregon, state of Oregon, incorporated governance, a subdivision of the United States, not a constitutional republic. All of the people since 1910, they take an oath to a bogus constitution. The bar, the British Accreditation Registry, on Oregon known as the Oregon State Bar, a group of attorneys, are responsible for the treason of Article 7 amended 1910. And they've carried it off for a really long time. Several people know about it. They understand it. And some that I know use it for their own best benefit. But we, the Oregon Statewide Jural Assembly, are looking to return Oregon to a constitutional Republican form of government this year, 2022. To do that, we have to convince the people on Oregon that they are not persons and that they are people. I'm going to read this again, and I'm sure William will put it on the screen. Article 1, Section 1. We declare that all men, when they form a social compact, are equal in right, that all power is inherent in the people, and all free governments are founded on their authority and instituted for their peace, safety, and happiness. And they have at all times the right to alter, reform, or abolish the government in such manner as they may think proper. Now let's examine that a little bit. Can you comprehend that you are a man or a woman on the land, on the soil of Oregon, without a ruler and without a subject, frequently referred to as sovereign? Can you comprehend that? There's a lot of people that say they comprehend it and then they say they're a state national. How can you give jurisdiction to a state if you're a sovereign man or woman? First, you have to be a sovereign man or woman and comprehend that and have your status correct for anybody that looks at it so that you are who you say you are. Then, after that is secured, and to secure that statement, it just takes living testimony in the form of an affidavit of truth. Whatever it is you say, you are a sovereign. Whatever you say is it. And then two additional sovereigns agree with you and witness what you say. You sign it in red, you print your name and date in blue, and you thumbprint it in red, and that's law. There is nobody that can rebut it unless you're a liar. But let's suppose you're not. So you declare that your status is a man or a woman. Nothing is higher. There is no higher jurisdiction. There's no Admiralty Court or United States Federal District Court or Oregon County or Circuit Court that has jurisdiction over you unless by firsthand knowledge someone has determined that you have damaged property or hurt another human being. Without that, and without a court's order from a judge's order to arrest you for a specific crime, or without a true bill from a grand jury, there is no authority over you. Now, if you choose, like Charlie and I did, to vote for a man in the primary, we went down and expatriated from being a sovereign to being a U.S. citizen, which we can do. We can be a state national or a U.S. citizen or a U.S. national or any of the subdivisions that a man or a woman can go into, peaceful inhabitant, registered foreign agent. There's lots of status that you can be. But first, you have to be a man or a woman, a sovereign without ruler or subject. After you're that, then you can be a state national if you wish to choose down to that, give jurisdiction to the state. Why anybody would give jurisdiction to the state of Oregon is beyond me. But people claim it. They claim it all the time. And I have no idea why. I try and explain it to some of them, but they're sold. They do not want to agree that they were fooled the first time. So they'll remain state nationals. Okay, wrong. The next thing is perception is reality. Very few of the Oregonians that think they're free men and women actually comprehend what the words mean, have ever looked them up, have ever read the Constitution, have ever read the Constitution of Oregon. Some people don't even know there is one. Read the Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union and the Declaration of Independence so that they have a grounding, a basis at least, on what it is they're talking about. It's like people that declare they're Christians and they've never read any of the Bible. But there you go again. So we have 36 sheriffs on Oregon. Out of those 36 sheriffs, one of us in our action committee has met several, maybe many of them, face to face, and put our information into their hands. And none of them are taking any action. None of them want to comprehend that Article 7 amended in the Constitution that they took an oath to is treason. They don't want to get, no, I don't want to believe that. It's true, doesn't make any difference. Their perception is their reality. And when you're the sheriff and your reality is wrong, imagine what that does to all the constituents that think that they have a lawful sheriff. They're wrong too. And then when you have one out of 36 that will meet with you a second time and actually read some of the stuff that I send out, and I get accused of sending out too much, and it's probably true, and I don't care. The delete button is on your computer. The send button is on mine. And that's it. So I send out an email to 36 sheriff and 3 of them and the president of the Sheriff's Association of Oregon have me blocked. How retarded. When I send out the email, I send one to my AOL address. And when I see it comes in blocked on Gmail, I just go to AOL and resend it to those people that had me blocked on Gmail. So far, none of them have figured out to block me on AOL. And when they do, then I'll send it on Frontier. That's the situation that we're in. And not only that, but we have 32 states and 17 territories that think they're states and will even argue that are in the same position. So far, only our Oregon Statewide Jural Assembly has made all the steps and moves to get to the point where we are really calling them out. We know the fraud, and it will be corrected this year. That's just going to happen. Not going to put up with anything less. So, our sheriff that talked to us wanted to know what we were going to do to support sheriffs. And that's a good question because we should. But the reality of the situation is, in my estimation, the sheriff must first be a constitutional sheriff. Now, I've read the sheriff's oath, and it's to uphold the Constitution of the United States and to uphold Oregon's Constitution and uphold the statutes and ordinances of the state. It's a threefold oath. And the first oath, to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America, has not been available since 1861. I got to sneeze. So the first Constitution, the one that Richard Mack thinks he's upholding, has not been available since March 1861. Then they doubled down and made a new constitution for or of, I forget which one, but it's bogus, brought in by the Lincoln administration. And nobody knows, hardly anybody knows, and nobody cares. They just take their oath to the Constitution, which is false. And then Oregon's Constitution was flipped in 1910. So they take an oath to Oregon's false Constitution. So they're taking an oath to a false entity or two false entities that they're going to uphold. And they think they've done their job. They think they know what they're doing. Richard Mack got authorization from the Supreme Court of the United States, which is bogus and has been bogus since March 1861. But we have been in a benevolent form of martial law under the Lieber Code in some form since 1863. It's still in effect. You call the Army Heritage Society, I have the number, and ask them if the Lieber Code is still in effect. And it was the last time they updated in 2015. So we have been in a benevolent form of martial law. You can fly on an airplane, and until the bogus events of the Twin Towers and the Department of Homeland Security and all that that has been brought to us that is unconstitutional and actual rape of our unalienable rights, it was still beneficial. You could benevolent. You could still get on a plane and fly, and you could still get a passport, and you didn't have to wear a mask, and nobody was going to make you get a shot. And you could go to work, and you didn't have to stay home, and nobody was going to lock you down. But the benevolent form has gone away. It has become malevolent. I was still thinking it was benevolent after it had even turned malevolent, and I knew that. And Eric brought it to my attention. You're using the wrong word. It's not benevolent anymore, it's malevolent. How bad does it have to get before you folks understand? How bad does it have to get before the sheriffs understand they've taken a false oath to a false constitution and they're playing the game, and the game is rigged? There's no way to win when you're treating with a tyrant. You can't do it. They've tried it lots and lots of times. What was that guy in England? The Prime Minister of England before Churchill. He went and signed a treaty with Hitler. Solved that. A treaty with the tyrant. Doesn't work. Then Stalin and Hitler signed a treaty. That didn't work either. You can't make a treaty with Kate Brown. Kate Brown is the one responsible for the FBI and the Oregon State Police murdering Robert Lavoy Finicum and then passing a law through the Oregon legislature exonerating them from the murder. And people still think, and they even voted her back in. The woman has no honor, none, zero. She's been found guilty in an Article 3, Amendment 7 court of record. And you people have to understand all power is inherent in the people. But if you don't do it, it doesn't get done. If the sheriff refuses to comprehend the fraud that has been perpetrated upon him and his office, it doesn't get fixed. If the perception is that of the photograph from a wrong point of view that gives you the wrong information, then your reality is wrong. And if you don't want to admit you were fooled the first time, you will ignore the second time and you'll be happy in your cognitive dissonance. Do you gather that in? How do we get it across to you? We got 36 sheriffs and only one will sit down and talk with us. Ray and I and Cam met with the sheriff of Washington County, Pat Garrett. This is 4 or 5 years ago now. And we explained this to Pat in a restaurant in Hillsboro, having coffee together, trying to be as amiable as possible. And he told us he's going to treat everybody the same. You don't treat everybody the same. People are not persons. And most persons don't understand the difference, and most people don't either. Words have meaning, and we really got to deal with them. So when we're looking at the serendipity of life, what we're going through, and you see what has happened to us in the last 2.5 years, they're killing us. In any case, here we are. It's June. We're going to have a trial, an Article 3, Amendment 7 trial on Zoom at 2 o'clock on the 26th of June. The last election that we had was based on a voter's ballot information from the Secretary of State that is based upon fraud. Fraud, when put forth by the Secretary of State that knows it was fraud. Her name is Shemaiah Fagan. Ray and I, Roger, rest in peace, and a guy named Al served all of the senators. No, one died. We served 29 that day. And we told them, and this was May 2018, I believe it was. We told them in the document that they all signed for that we have proof of service to them, that they understood Article 7 amended was a fraud. And they understand they acquiesced to this in 21 days, and they did. They acquiesced to it. So they know. And she's known since she was a senator, and we have proof of that. And now she's Secretary of State, and she permitted on the ballot these people that have taken an oath to Article 7 amended for re-election. That's fraud, knowingly and intentionally. That's treason. And that's what we're. And I yield.
I have so much I want to address.
Well, come on,
And I'm
Charlie.
just going to let her roll out here and just try to follow me along, because everything you mentioned is just like, oh, okay. So actually, the people are the judge and the jury. We are supposedly the governed. But what is government? It's control, influence, or regulation of the people. Govern. If we self-govern, that's different. But ment means mind. And there's a judgment on people from our judiciary who we give jurisdiction to. But if we are the ones who are capable of giving jurisdiction, then doesn't that put us over those who are judging the people? So I feel that it's really important for us to play with these words and find out what the definitions are, like you said, because it's a mind game, it's a word game, and it's a mindset that is so important that we grok. For example, this morning I corrected someone who I was with who said, "Thank you, sir," who held the door. And I said to her, "Why did you say sir?" And she said, "Well, because I feel that it's polite." I said, "Why didn't you?" She said, "Well, I could have said, thank you, Mr." I said, "No, why don't you just say thank you?" And I said, "Because sir is a title. It's a, British, it's a British royalty title. There's sirs and earls and lords. And so she said, well, because she felt corrected. And here we get into cognitive dissonance, because as much as I want to have these discussions, they feel defensive. Like, well, you're correcting me. I said, no, I'm not correcting. I'm just informing you of a thought, because it's so ingrained in our culture that we don't even question the words we use or their meaning and how it affects our self-esteem and our sense of self or mindset. So, and then I just wanted to address one thing about the sheriff conversation when he was saying, well, what you could do for us, because we were wanting him to do something for us, right? And he said, well, what you could do for us is to help us. For example, helping in the community, the beach cleanup, we have people who've been burned out of their homes. You could help with the fires, in terms of helping table for resources for people who've lost their homes, etc. My response to him is that our house is on fire. And the things that we are addressing in our Oregon Statewide Jural Assembly are as important or more important because they are the foundation of our daily activity, and it's urgent. The things that we are addressing in the assembly are urgent, and they must be corrected. We can't continue being nice to each other and helping each other with a smile when we're being. So I yield.
Thank you, Charlie.
And it's true. I agree with the meeting with the sheriff. For him to have more concern with regards to us helping him, it sounded like to me he was trying to push off the idea and principles that we're bringing to him to learn or know, and he just seems like he states he doesn't have the time, or and he's like the least busy sheriff on Oregon, so he doesn't have the time, supposedly. I mean, I don't know how that somebody in that position can say they don't have the time when they get off work. They need to make the time to read what they swore to, at the very least. He probably hasn't done that. And so, I mean, what can we really expect out of somebody who's not willing to even know what his own actual job is? Which brings me to the point that I think that, like you brought up Athens, Tennessee, they don't realize how close we are. And I mean, with them attempting to bring the gun grabs in and whatnot, what more purpose could they have to want to do that, except for the fact that they know that we are backed into a corner at this point and we are willing to stand up.
And Brandon yielded.
I'd like to add. I would like to add to that. In that conversation with the sheriff, in the beginning, he said, "I answer to my constituents." That's the key. He wants to be reelected. If he can't, if he's not doing what the constituents say, he will not be there. The problem is that the constituents that we're talking about have been educated, aka brainwashed by the school system of this nation, his county, and are not educated in reality, most of which do not understand that there's actually an Oregon Constitution as well as a United States Constitution. And then, of course, when we get into that, you've well laid out several problems with these constitutions. So we're dealing with a populace that doesn't understand what they really want. And then when you get into this, especially the younger people, if you went and asked them or talked to them about being a free man or woman on the state, it's a scary, scary thing to them. Because that would mean that when you come up to an intersection, you would have to make your own decision on whether you could actually make that right on a red or not. Here in our Portland here, they've gone so far because we've been dumbed down. They actually have to put a sign up there that says "No turn on red," because apparently the majority of the people can't actually do it safely without doing it. So now I'm seeing at other intersections that don't have that sign at all, they just sit there and wait and wait and wait and wait until the light turns green, and then they finally make their right. Even though the line, there's no traffic coming at all, they'll just sit there. So that's what we're dealing with, is an uneducated populace that are voting. I remember reading the original Constitution, or really close to the original Constitution, because that problem there. But I remember it said that idiots could not vote. So I'm thinking maybe we should go back to the original Constitution that says that. I yield.
There's a point I'd like to make on that. Go ahead, Brandon.
I was just gonna say, I know we were pressed a little bit on time with the sheriff. However, I think that when he brought up the fact that he meets with all kinds of people in groups and this and that he actually has had multiple meetings with the BLM group, it would have been nice to probe a little bit into what kind of meetings these were and what the conversations were surrounding, because it sounds like to me he's had multiple meetings with BLM groups or group, and you know, for what is the purpose there? You know, are they paying, or is there some sort of like collusion going on? What are these meetings about, you know?
Well, we do know that legally, which is not lawfully or constitutionally, the sheriffs are under the control of the United Nations. I think it was Agenda 21 or something, maybe even further back than that. That they do word art and they pass laws that don't mean anything, and the population agrees with the law that was passed that infringes upon their rights, such as the Fourth Amendment to be free and to be secure in your person and your property, but they wear a mask. And I see these people that go out and do cop watching and First Amendment audits wearing a mask. They're out there protecting their First Amendment right while they give away their Fourth Amendment. Utterly ridiculous. I didn't hear him say he met several times with the BLM. I heard him say he met with the BLM, which is probably not a bad thing. He was meeting with us and we're on the other end, the extreme other end. And what William said about idiots, I don't know the correct terminology for idiot, stupid, moron, or I'm sure that there is a specific definition for each one of those words. But we do know that 12 to 15% of the population is not smart enough to pass the test to get into the military. Now, I don't know what level of education or intelligence that is, but I'm sure everybody here has seen Forrest Gump. And we're dealing with some real problems. We're dealing with them forthrightly, and we're dealing with them from Article 1, Section 1 of Oregon's Constitution, and we will continue to do that. To flesh out what Brandon said, if you have a mind to, look up Athens, Tennessee, 1947 on DuckDuckGo. And unless anybody's got more to say, I yield again.
They do not want to let go of this. They do not intend on losing here. And we do not intend giving it back to them.
And then the bullets started flying. Then he jumps out of the car. And he's got both his hands up. And he got out of the car, and he had his hands in the air. He's like, just shoot me then. This is what you want, to shoot me. And they did. They shot him dead. With his hands in the air, and I saw it. I swear to God. He was just walking with his hands in the air. And they shot him. And they shot him dead, and then after he was down on the ground, they shot him 3 more times.